Hi everyone, I'm Jamie Kubota from the Nutrition, Food Science and Packaging Department here at San Jose State. I have Kelly, grad student and teaching assistant with me today, and we are going through a little produce talk with you. So we happen to have some fresh produce here, some things that you might be using while you're cooking. I'm going to start with our onions, and we've got a variety of different onions. So recipes often call for one particular onion, but if you don't have that onion, you can substitute other onions. So we have red onion, white onion, yellow onion, shallots. This is what a shallot looks like. Green onions, and we've got our garlic here too. We're gonna walk you through garlic. This is actually a head of garlic, and you might actually need a clove of garlic. So within this papery skin, we've got cloves, okay? So this is a clove. This is a head of garlic, okay? And here we also have some tomatoes. So we do have a Roma tomato. Tomatoes come in a variety of different sizes and shapes. There's slicing tomatoes, hothouse tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes. You might hear that term. And heirloom tomatoes, Kelly, what do you say about
heirloom tomatoes? Are old varieties of tomatoes that had long been left out of produce markets because they didn't travel or hold particularly well, but they were rediscovered by people that love the taste of good tomatoes, and they brought them back, and now there's many varieties you can get now even at the supermarket sometimes.
Yeah. So you can find heirloom tomatoes, and the fun thing about them is they come in a variety of different colors and shapes. So these happen to be from my garden. I have heirloom cherry tomatoes growing, and I have to tell you, they're delicious. So tomatoes, we use tomatoes all the time. Tomatoes, when they're in season, are delicious. Tomatoes, when they're not in season, don't seem to taste as good, and that's when you might opt for a canned variety of tomato, which are going to be picked at their peakest and canned right away, so they usually have a lot of flavor in them. So that's a good option when they're not fresh, right? We also have on our plate here, we've got some potatoes. So these are good old russet potatoes. Here's a sweet potato. We've got some ginger, a red pepper, and this is a red bell pepper, which are sweet. Okay, so you'll see bell peppers, sweet peppers in a variety of colors, from red to orange to yellow to green, green being the least ripe. It's going to be a little bit more bitter, and you get a little bit more sweetness out of the sweet bell peppers when they're redder. Okay? And they come in a variety of sizes too. Yeah. So now they have the little sweet peppers, which are fun. They call them lunchbox peppers. Yeah. You can get those, and they're really fun. So you can work with those, add those to a recipe, or put them in your lunchbox, your bento box, to go along with your sandwich, whatever. They're delicious. And then, of course, we don't have any here. There are the hot peppers, chili peppers.
They tend to be smaller.
They tend to be smaller, but they also come in both green and red.
They do.
And they come in a variety of different sizes. So the hot peppers are definitely going to be hot, and you want to take care when you're working with them that you don't touch them and then touch any part of your face, because
capsaicin burns like mad when it touches your flesh.
So if you were actually touch the inside of a cut jalapeno, for example, and then rub your eye, the oils from the jalapeno get in your eye and will start burning your eye. So you do have to be careful with that. Not with the sweet peppers. The sweet peppers, you don't have to worry about that. Another thing we have here, working our way around, we have avocado, but we've got a cucumber and a zucchini, which oftentimes can be confused, right? If you're not really well versed in your veggies, you may not know the difference between a zucchini and a cucumber. I find this with students all the time, so I wanted to just point them out. This is a cucumber, and this is a zucchini. It's a zucchini squash. Typically, we eat cucumbers raw. Zucchini is often cooked, but can be eaten raw. And then looking at the zucchini, there's also yellow squash. So this is yellow squash, which is very similar to zucchini or zucchini squash, and can be used kind of interchangeably.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we've got carrots, good old carrots, because carrots are the basis of many recipes. This is an eggplant. If you haven't seen an eggplant whole, this is what it looks like. I think this one, we were looking at this earlier, actually looks like a little face. It looks like the hair. This is the stem portion. And then this is the flesh. This is what we would be cutting up and cooking with. So
it's totally ready for its close-up. It's got that really fabulous hairdo.
It's adorable.
We love to play with our food.
because food is beautiful.
It is. It is.
Not only is it delicious, it's beautiful. Okay. We also have some fun fruits to work with today. So we're going to be looking at mango, showing you how to cut up a mango. Kelly is going to run you through cutting up a pineapple, because we know that this is one of the most frightening things to people who aren't that familiar with it, is how do you cut up a fresh pineapple.
And it looks dangerous, and don't worry about it. It's going to be fine.
It's kind of prickly. It's actually not hard to cut up. It just takes someone to walk you through it the first time. We also have some citrus, because this is used quite widely in cooking. We've got a lemon and a lime. Some cultures don't really distinguish between the two, but you'll see that there's a slightly different flavor between the two. So some recipes call for lime and some call for lemon. But in a pinch, you can sub one for the other. And then we've got an apple, basic apple, but we're going to show you one way to take that core out of the apple that maybe you haven't seen before. So now that we've had a tour of our produce, we're going to move into showing you how to use some of that produce, how to cut some of that produce.
Let's do it.
So we're going to start with some of our onions, and I've got a yellow onion here and a shallot. I'll work you through both. There are many ways to cut an onion. I'm going to show you the way that I learned how to do onions at culinary school. There's two parts to the onion, well, many parts to the onion, but there's a top and a bottom, right? So this is the top that would be attached to the greenery that would be coming out of the ground, and then these are the roots. And so the way that I cut the onion is, number one, I'm going to take the greenery part off. So I'm just going to slice that off and get rid of it, or leave it to my stock, my soup pot, right? And then this part here, what I want to do is I want to actually get rid of some of those little roots, just so that they don't get messy on my board.
But they're dirty.
They're dirty.
That was in the dirt.
That was in the dirt.
So that you don't want your board all dirty.
But I'm just barely cutting it off so that actually the onion stays together. It stays held together. And then I've got a flat surface, and I can cut this onion in half. Now, I've got two parts. This was a huge onion. So
it's ginormous.
Ginormous. Recipes often call for a specific size of onion. They'll say one small onion, one medium onion, one large onion. That just kind of takes some judgment as to, I would say that this is probably 2 large onions.
I think it's probably 2 cups of
yes.
chopped onions.
It also might ask you for 2 cups of onions, or cups of onions, or it might ask you for size.
A large onion is usually about a cup of chopped onion.
You can see that once you open it up, the onion grows in layers. So I've got layers of onions. And what I want to do is take off these outer papery layers, because they're not edible.
Yeah, I mean, onions are cheap, and that's not the nice bit.
No.
So take it off.
So I'm going to take that off on both sides, because I'm going to dice one side and I'm going to slice the other side and show you. So this onion there's a little bit of mold growing there. Maybe not the absolute freshest onion that we could have gotten, but all I need to do is remove that and I'm good.
Shows you the value of taking off a couple of layers of that skin.
Exactly, and you can see that the rest of the onion is fine. So I'm going to show you first how to dice an onion. So the way that we're going to do this is we have our onion, and we're going to make cuts in it going in this direction. Through the onion, but not all the way through this end of the onion. So just up to that end of the onion. And we're going to follow the layers of the onion. So you can see how the rings of the onion are coming here. We're just going to follow those around with our knife like this. And then once those cuts are made, we can turn the onion, and we can then cut perpendicularly to those first cuts. And what we end up with is diced onions. Now, depending on what size dice you need, that determines how wide you make your cuts. So if you need small dice, you're going to make very narrow cuts, or the cuts are going to be very close together. So if I wanted a 1/4 inch dice, I'd make my cuts a 1/4 inch apart. Okay? And if I want large dice, then I make wider cuts. Okay? So for this, I'm just going to do kind of small to medium dice, because we will then probably use this in our soup later. And I'm just kind of following that onion, but it's still held together. And then I can turn it, and I'm going to go the opposite direction, or perpendicular to my first cut, all the way down. And the end gets a little slippery, so just go a little slower. But now I have diced onions. This I can save if I'm making veggie stock. I'm going to save that for my veggie stock. And here's my diced onions. Okay. And you see that those are all cut up pretty uniformly.
Yeah, and they're not sticking together, and they're all coming apart like they're supposed to. It fluffs out into a nice pile.
I'm going to just push those to the side so I have some space to show you how I will slice this. So there's different ways to slice. One way that I could do it is I could just cut this way, and I'd end up with nice slices of onion, and those would be good like on a burger, for example, if I want just a garnish for my burger. I can also turn it this way, and I can make my cuts this way and cut all the way through. Now, it's easiest if I leave that core intact, but then they're going to hold together as well. If I want them to kind of separate, I can cut off a little bit more of that top. And then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to...
That does give you some control, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
I'm going to cut this way, and you'll see that I've got nice slices. And I always try to find a flat surface from my veggie so that my veggie isn't rolling around. And then I'm just careful on my last couple of slices because it's easier for the vegetable to slip or slide when it's a smaller piece. And now I've got nice slices, and I'm crying. So, what's the deal with onions?
She loves onions so much, she's in
I love
tears.
onions, it makes me cry. So, onions naturally have these sulfurous compounds that will irritate the eyes.
That's
I literally
outstanding.
am crying. This was a big onion, and obviously has some good volatile compounds in it. This happens naturally. They actually sell onion goggles.
They do.
Yeah.
And even your regular glasses don't always help.
No.
You want to know a secret trick for when I've gotten onioned? So if I've got really, if I look like Professor Kubota here with tears in my eyes from the onion, I come around, I go to my sink, I run the water, and I sniff the water.
Oh.
It's a negative ion generator, and it helps reduce the volatiles and breaks them down a little bit. It changes the charge of it.
That's so
just
funny.
enough.
I haven't tried that before. I'll try that next
It's
time.
like putting yourself under a waterfall. It's very refreshing.
This reminds me of a story from culinary school. I'm going to tell a quick funny story because
Outstanding.
it goes along with our onions. One of my first classes in culinary school was French provincial cooking with Chef Hervé. Kelly and I went to the same culinary school, so she knows who Chef Hervé is.
Yeah.
And every day we would cook, and we were in what we called a fishbowl classroom. It was like a stadium seating classroom, and the kitchen was at the front of the classroom. And the maybe second or third day of class, he decided to make blanquette de veal stew. But we were making it for a large quantity, so he needed 8 onions cut, and he called me down to cut his onions. So I'm at the chopping board cutting while he's lecturing about this. And of course, I'm very susceptible to this. I'm very sensitive to onions, and I just start crying. And I remember Chef Hervé turning around and looking at me and going, "Good God, girl, what's the matter?" And I was like, "It's the onions, it's the onions."
Well, and those guys are kind of scary anyway. The chefs in culinary school tend to be kind of gruff and scary, and they try to be, and so it worked.
But you know what? It's not a scary thing to cook.
It isn't.
You may cry because of the onions, and it's okay. Now, moving back to our onion discussion.
Indeed.
We also have a shallot. So how do you treat a shallot? It's essentially a small baby red onion. That's how you can think of it.
Yeah, but there's really no substitution for shallots, especially in French food, I have to say.
Yeah. They have a slightly different flavor. They're sweeter.
You might say it's a garlic plus an onion. Maybe
Yes.
you could, but it is just its own thing. It really does taste different than the other ones.
I like to open it up,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to treat the half of it like I do an onion.
They grow in these kind of nodes where
Yep.
you can
So
see
sometimes
the different buds of it.
when you open it up like that, they might even fall apart because they
You
have
might
these.
find that there's a whole other part that looks like a separate piece, and that's fine. Just treat it the same way.
And they're a little bit, sometimes can be a little bit trickier to peel.
Yeah, they're kind of pain.
Yeah, because the skin is a little bit thinner and it sticks, oftentimes
That
it
one's quite
sticks.
fresh, too, you
This
can
one's a
tell.
good shallot.
Yeah.
It sticks to the flesh,
Yeah,
but
and it's shiny and
here we go. So we have our shallot, and then I can just set that on my board. I'm going to make a little space here so that I can cut that. I'm going to get rid of the little tops. and then I can cut that just like I cut my onions. So I'm going to make my slices, and I'm dicing this, and then I'm going to turn it perpendicular, and I did lose a little piece, and that's okay. Put it back in.
Look at that.
And then we're going to have diced shallots. So, do love to have shallots. So, you know, it is nice to have them when a recipe calls for them because they are distinct, but if you don't have a shallot, you can't find a shallot at the market, a little onion, a little red onion is totally fine.
A little red onion with a little garlic is a kind of nice, typical other substitution. But don't worry too much about it. The main thing is that they're all of the same family. They're all basically going to taste the same. And so you don't have to worry that much. It's not that big of a deal.
Nope. You can also have green onions.
Mm-hmm.
So green onions called for a lot. And these are nice little fresh green onions. I'm just going to pull out a couple.
They're also called scallions. They have two names.
Yep, you might hear them as scallions. So if I'm looking at this, you know, what I often do is peel this outer layer off, and this is kind of wimpy anyway, so I'm going to peel that off.
And again, that's been in the dirt.
That's been in the dirt. I also tend to rinse them at that point.
Yeah.
So I would take these, I would peel that one outer layer off, and then I'd give them a quick rinse just to make sure there's nothing left from being in the dirt. And that should be good. Now with green onions or scallions, sometimes a recipe will specify white part only or green part only. And so in that case, that's fine. Just use the white part or the green part. But it's not a problem if you were to throw all of it in.
It's really just
fine. It's just fine. So I'm going to scoot this over. Now I have a big pile of onions, pretty pile of onions here. The way I usually do it is I'm going to cut it. Now, you'll see that I cut off the really green parts, and here I have the white part with a little bit of green. I usually treat this as my white part, and this is my green part. This is often what you cook with. This is often what you garnish with, but again, whatever you want to do. And then, so I can do these separately, I'm just going to hold them, and I'm going to quickly chop them. You might see a recipe that calls for chopped green onions, in which case this is what you'd be looking for, or just the green tops. And with the green tops for garnish, you can cut them straight across like that, and you get little pieces of green onion, which make a nice little garnish on top of a potato or soup or anything else. You can also make them a little bit bigger by cutting them on the diagonal or on the bias there. And we get a little bit bigger pieces.
So when we say we're cutting on the bias, it's just a fancy way of saying we're cutting a diagonal.
Exactly. There we go. And now we've got some cut on the bias. That would be a nice garnish as well.
Do you think you want to do a garlic as well?
Yes.
Sure.
So how do we manage garlic? That's another thing. So we had the head of garlic, the clove of garlic. So if the recipe calls for a clove of garlic, they're talking about one clove of garlic, here you go, or multiple, whatever. So we have our garlic, and it needs to be peeled. So it has a papery covering on it. You can see that here. You could try to peel it like that. There are tools for peeling, and then there's also an easy way to do garlic here. My favorite way to do garlic is to smash the garlic. A lot of people get a lot of pleasure out of this as well. This is the fun part of cooking, right? So I'm going to take my chef's knife, and I'm going to lay it flat on top of that piece of garlic, and then I'm going to use my other hand to give it a good whack.
Okay.
And then what happens is that helps it to separate from the papery covering.
Nice.
And that is discarded. And then there's a little part on the top that I usually get rid of as well.
Yeah, nobody wants to eat that.
Nope. And then I'll open it up. And this one's not so bad. Sometimes, depending on how old your garlic is, you might have like a green shoot.
It will have started to sprout.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you'll want to remove that because it's
doesn't
usually
taste
pretty
good.
bitter.
Yeah.
So you could open it up. If there's a shoot there, remove it. And then what you can do with your garlic is mince it. So there are garlic presses.
Let me clear a little space for you.
You can use a garlic press on this, and that would be fine. Or we can use our knife. And so I usually will hold it carefully and run my knife through it one way, just to really break it up into pieces. And then this is what they call, and it's a technical term, rocking the knife. I'm going to rock my knife
So that
through.
kind of knife is a European chef knife, and it's designed with a curve to it, so it'll rock like this. You do this for chopping garlic and herbs and things like that. It's the difference between an Asian style knife and a European style knife.
And it's quite useful for just this type of
And look at how
task.
fine that mince is.
So we've got minced garlic there. Now you could also use a garlic press. Some chefs have very strong opinions about using garlic presses. They feel very strongly that using a garlic press changes the flavor of the garlic, so they will refuse to use one. I personally feel there may be some truth to that, but for convenience sake, I often will use a garlic press when I'm at home just because it makes things go so much faster. Once you get used to using a knife and you're fast with a knife, you can see that that didn't take me much time though.
No, it doesn't take that much time, and sometimes, and you can actually just smash one too. And
You could.
There's all different ways, but
And some recipes, if you're making like,
the onions are starting to get to me too.
so sometimes what you can do is just smash them and put them in the oil as you're heating your oil and infuse the oil with the garlic and then remove the big piece of garlic after that's been infused, and you get a little bit of flavor that way. So there's a lot of different ways to
And
use
some
your
people
garlic.
don't tolerate it very well, and
Exactly.
so that's a good way to give the flavor, but not make people have bad tummies.
That's right. And I personally like to make sure that it's minced pretty finely because
Yeah.
I don't like to get a big chunk of garlic. Even if it's cooked, I don't like to have a big chunk of garlic. Personal preference. This is ginger. So this is fresh ginger. You can buy it in the market, and usually when you go to the supermarket, it comes in big pieces. And I think some people get intimidated by it because they feel like they have to buy that whole big piece, and they're not going to use
So
that.
that's like a hand.
Yeah.
Call it a hand of ginger. You're allowed to just break a piece off in the grocery store and only buy the amount you want. It's really
So
okay.
I did that with this piece, but you can, and this piece is kind of big, but I could have just bought that much,
You
right?
can just buy a few inches.
So don't be intimidated by fresh ginger because you really don't have to buy a big piece of it. You can buy whatever you need for your recipe. So I'm going to show you what you would do with this. It's very pungent, like if you smell that.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that smell.
It's very, very pungent, very strong.
It wakes you up.
It has a peel on it, and there's different ways to handle this depending on how you're going to use your ginger. I keep saying garlic, but I mean ginger. Depending how you're going to use your ginger. So sometimes it's minced like this. So what you would do is take the peel off and then mince it like I did the garlic. You can also grate it, which is my favorite way to use it. So if you're going to do that, let me use this piece actually. I'm going to just cut a little piece so that I have a flat end. Okay. One way you can do this is just with your knife. So I can run my knife around the edge and pull off that skin. You can see I'm losing quite a bit. Other people will use a spoon. So you can take a spoon and you can just pull. Oops, this one is not behaving. I can peel it this way.
And that doesn't waste as much garlic.
This doesn't waste.
Ginger. See, now I'm doing it.
She's doing the same thing. So this is going to get my skin off until I get to that nub there. A little bit without wasting quite as much, but I'm going to go around this nub just for the purpose of this little show. And this could actually go in tea. So I could steep this in some hot water, and I could make a nice little ginger tea, right?
I make ginger syrup too.
Yep. So now I've got ginger, and I can slice it like this, and that's sliced ginger, okay? Or I could line those slices up, run my knife through one way, and then turn those and run my knife the other direction, and I've got minced ginger, okay? Or I'm going to show you, I can also grate it. So I can use a zester or a grater, and I can grate the ginger.
I think for people that find ginger to be quite strong, that doing a grating is a little more accessible. A lot of times kids have a hard time with ginger. It tastes hot to them, I think.
It's spicy.
Yeah.
When you get a big piece of ginger, it's spicy.
You don't want to put them off of that.
But it is really one of the aromatics that is used quite a bit in like Asian cuisine.
It's part of the base of almost any Asian stir-fry.
Garlic,
dish.
ginger, green onion. That's going to give you that flavor of authentic Chinese food.
That's really the main base, yeah.
Yep. So there we go. We have grated ginger, minced ginger, sliced ginger. So that's how you use ginger. We also have peppers and avocados here. I'm going to show you my pepper method. I have my own method for cutting peppers.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
Chefs have different methods for cutting peppers. Oftentimes what you'll see is that chefs will cut right down the center, open it up, and then just pull out the seeds and work with the pepper. I like to cut off the top and then cut off the bottom, and I go around, the top, go around it, pull it off, I'll show you. And then what I'm left with is a way to pull out the seeds, and really the only thing I'm gonna end up throwing away is this little green top. So I cut off the bottom, then I turn it around and I'm gonna cut through the top, but not all the way through, just through the flesh of the top, okay? And then what I can do is I can pull that off, and it will actually come off. So I've got this part and this part. And then I'm gonna take my knife and I'm gonna just run it down through the pepper so that I can open it up. And once I do that, then I can just cut along those ribs to pull the seeds out.
And that's sort of a guide.
Yep. So here's a rib. I'm gonna get rid of this rib because it's got some seeds on it. And the ribs are bitter. They don't taste as good, so you wanna get rid of those anyway. And my last rib.
Nice.
So this is what I'm throwing away. There's really no usable flesh on there
So
at
that
all.
leaves you with a much bigger edible portion.
And it's in a nice form. So now I've got a
nice plank.
strip of pepper that's easier for me to deal with. So I can take that and I can cut it into smaller strips, which could then be sliced.
I like to cut from the inside of the pepper because the outside the skin's kind of tough, but it's much easier to cut from
Yes,
the inner side of it than the outer
exactly.
side.
So I've got sliced peppers. Now the other thing I might need would be diced peppers. And so I am going to cut it down this way. And then I'm going to take those slices that I just made, turn them, and go the other direction, and I've got diced peppers.
So from julienne to diced, just like that.
Yep, and that's pretty easy. And I can take those other pieces and I can do the same thing. So I could dice those, or these could go into my snack bowl. But nothing is wasted. That's what I like about this method.
All right, so I'm going to show you how to cut up an avocado. Avocado is pretty popular these days. A lot of avocado toast being eaten. So the way I learned to do it, and I've always had good success with, is to cut it right here, sort of pole to pole, and then.
And the nice thing is she left it on the cutting board, so she was letting the cutting board do the work.
Yeah, I don't hold these up in the air to cut them. They're pretty dangerous. They're very rolly. A lot of people get injured cutting avocados.
So there's actually a new term in emergency rooms. So they've had so many people come into the emergency room who've cut their hand while cutting avocados that there's a new term for doctors. It's avocado hand. So when someone cuts their hand when they're cutting an avocado, that's what it is.
This is completely preventable.
Yes.
And so I just twist it. This one is maybe a little overripe. It's got a little darkness in there. But I twist it, and that leaves with one half has the pit in it and one half is without. Now for me, I remove the pit by doing that.
So she's putting the base of her knife. She's going to hit the pit of the avocado with the base of her knife gently.
And just to catch it, just enough. And then watching where my fingers are, I twisted that just a little bit, slowly and gently. This isn't done for speed. And then that's how I get it off.
So the way I usually do it is almost the same, is that I just use my 2 fingers to push it down off of the knife, but very carefully.
Either one, but it is worth taking one's time and doing this carefully for safety, and because your pieces come out so much nicer. So
there's the pit.
That's a pit. You can grow it into a tree. It really does work. So I like to take a large spoon, not a little small teaspoon, more a big soup spoon like this, and I want to go around the edge all the way around and loosen the flesh from the peel of the avocado. You know, they call these alligator pears. I've heard them called that. And then once you get that part loosened, you can get the spoon up underneath it, and voila, you've got a whole half an avocado all peeled and nice and ready to slice any way you like. I make sure and find that little stem and pick it out of there, and then how do you like it? I think some slices. Always got my claw hand, keeping my fingers tucked under. This is very soft, it's very delicate.
It's certainly ripe, so this
It's very
avocado
ripe,
is...
and there's some nice avocado. And another way to do it, and I think it's the somewhat less safe way, but a lot of people hold it in their hand and cut like this. I'm more likely to leave it on the board and do that. So cut it while it's still in.
And you're just cutting to the skin. So
I'm
she's
not
running the
cutting-
knife through the flesh of the avocado to the skin,
Stopping
not
at
through
the
the skin.
skin,
Yeah,
right.
just to the skin.
And using the skin as a container
Yep.
to keep all my pieces there. And now I'm going to have some diced avocado.
So now you can take the spoon and pull it out,
can-
and it's already diced.
And it's just like that.
Yeah.
It's simple. Again, you do the same procedure. It is take the time to go around the whole outside so that the trick works and it really loosens everything. Some avocados, when they're not as ripe, this isn't as easy, but the procedure works. And again, we get clean inside. We've really gotten all of that flesh. And now we have some nice dice as well. So.
You could run a knife or a fork through that to make guacamole. Yeah.
Do
So
anything you want.
let me pull this out of the way for you.
So the next thing I'm going to show you, and I need to wipe my hands, excuse me, is the most daunting of vegetables and fruits, I think, is this spiny, pokey, prickly pineapple. But some of the most well-protected fruits are, by nature, are often the most delicious ones. And so we're going to show you how to break this down, and it's way quicker and easier than you think. This is part of understanding how something grows. In order to understand how to take it apart, you have to understand how it's put together.
Kelly, let me just turn this over for you
Thank you very much.
so that you have a clean surface.
We don't
for
really want
your
avocado pineapple,
pineapple.
while it's not a bad mix. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my pineapple down on the board. I'm going to catch right up here. I'm going to just cut that top right off,
She's tapping it.
like so.
Some
And
people
then-
save this. If you've got a pretty fresh pineapple, you can just set it there and you can use that as a garnish on
I
your fruit
do.
plate.
It goes on the middle of the tray for me, and then I'll put all the nice pineapple spears in a nice dip, and that's just a pretty little appetizer the way it is.
And then another thing about it, when you're choosing a pineapple, right? We didn't talk about how to choose a pineapple. Another way that you can choose, or a way that you can find a fresh pineapple is when you're at the market, if you reach in and you pull one of these center fronds and it comes out easily, then the pineapple is ripe. The other thing to look for is the color.
The color, also smell.
Yeah.
So I really believe in approaching food with all of my senses. And so if something smells right, it is right. If it doesn't smell right, it isn't right. It's the most basic of our senses. We are animals at heart when it comes to eating, and our old brain knows when something smells right and is edible and when it isn't. So
And pineapple should smell like a fresh, sweet
Yeah,
pineapple
it
if
should-
it's ripe.
yeah, it shouldn't smell fermented or alcoholic in any way, because that means it's pretty old. So now I'm going to just remove the base, and that'll leave me with a cylinder, and it should be a nice flat cylinder that'll stay nice and secure on this board. It's very stable. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to run away from me. So when you look at this pineapple, you can see how it's put together. You can see where the rind and the prickly bits end and begin. We're going to just remove the parts that we don't want to eat. So in much the same way that Michelangelo always said he could just had to take away all the parts of the stone that weren't,
You're sculpting your pineapple is what you're saying.
I am sculpting my pineapple. First of all, once you cut off that very first piece, you get a real look at where you are. So this one, for instance, has a little more of the thorns in here, so I'm going to want to cut just a little deeper. And you can see exactly where the good part begins and the less good part ends.
So you're just working your way around the pineapple, taking the skin off the entire pineapple.
So we're going to get all of this rind off of here.
And if you're lucky, you have a sous chef that can remove that for you.
Thank you very much. And then I need to always go back and check and make sure there's no little stragglers of these thorns, because nobody wants to bite into one of those.
That you start at the top, but if you flip it back over, like turn it over now,
you'll see
the ones that you missed, and you can go back with your knife and find those.
See, because a lot of times you don't cut it as well on the base.
Right, because you can't see it as you're working your knife around.
And so it's really worth taking the time to just clean it up just a little. This one actually looks pretty good. Might get a couple of these guys.
I think you're good. I would eat that. Now let's clear this off.
If you don't mind, thank you. The next part.
Let me wipe your board for you.
Thank you.
So this is where it helps to have a friend cook with you.
It is fun to do this together. Chef Jamie and I have found out that we work fairly well together, actually. Yes. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to quarter this pineapple, and
so you're cutting it right down the middle,
right down
through the core.
Then I'm creating 2 flat bases, nice and secure, nice and stable. I'm going to cut those right in the middle and in the middle, and then I'm going to see the part that is the core. I should have 4 core parts. I'm going to stand this safely on a nice flat bottom. I'm going to take out the core. This, as far as I can tell, is the easiest way to core a pineapple.
And this part is really hard.
Yeah, it's not edible.
It's not edible. My kids like to kind of gnaw on this, and you get a little flavor out of it, but usually most people can't eat that.
Yeah, I mean, they're very fibrous and tough. Another one of those. And the last of the quarters. All right, so now I have these 4 pieces. We can go with several different cuts. The most common is you cut this in half lengthwise, you cut it in half again, you cut the other one in half again, and we have spears. Good old pineapple spears, can use them for plenty of things. Absolutely fun for handing to the kids.
Oh, yes.
And then turn it the other way and slice across, and we get those pineapple tidbits that some people find in a can. It's not that hard to do. This tastes immensely better. I can smell it. It just smells so comforting and lovely and exotic and tropical. You got little triangles.
So this is going to be lovely in a fruit salad.
It's going to be so nice in a fruit salad. Again, I take those spears and I just lay them out as an appetizer with a little bit of plain yogurt, tiny bit of lemon zest, a little bit of honey in the yogurt. It's a lovely dip, completely healthy, completely delicious.
I think lime would be delicious in that.
Another great thing is to put tagine on this or any kind of a chili powder. Absolutely great, like street food, right?
Be a good snack.
Yeah, so eat it in tidbits, eat it in spears, but really, just try it. It's worth it.
A few more fruits.
All right.
Okay, we have an apple. An apple, most people just eat an apple raw and just would eat it out of the core. But if you are going to cut this up, a good way to do that is to, number 1, cut it in half. Okay, and then to take the core out. Okay. So I like to use a melon baller, and all you have to do is press that round part over the core, press down and around, and you can pull out just the seeds, and then you can use. That's perfect. You can use that same tool to just clean up your the little stem end. So I got rid of that, and this side doesn't really have much there.
In case there could be in a pear, there'd be a little bit of stem there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do the same thing with a pear.
Same type
exactly.
of thing.
So if I needed this peeled, I could have peeled it first. Didn't show you that, but you could peel it first and then do the same trick. And then if I need this sliced, I can slice it If I just want to do that for a more interesting presentation for a salad, I could. I could also take it, we'll do the other side. So I'm going to use my melon baller, press down.
These are pretty.
Go around, and then use that same tool to pull out the little stem and end. And I've got my apple. I could dice this. So if I needed diced apple for a salad rather than sliced apple, I could.
So you cut that, you gave a horizontal cross.
I did, because it was such a big piece.
It was a tall piece.
Yep, and now I'm going to go the other way, and I've got little pieces of apple that'll go nicely in a salad. Right?
Apples.
So, diced apple, sliced apple, but the fun thing was the melon baller.
Absolutely.
And works well for the apple, works well in a pear, either one. Oftentimes in cooking, you'll be asked for lemon juice or lime juice. So in that case, I do personally prefer fresh lemon or lime juice. You can buy it in a bottle. And so some people keep a bottle of lime juice or lemon juice in their refrigerator, and that's fine. But if you're going to use fresh, what you're going to end up doing is just cutting it in half and then making sure if there's any seeds, you can take those out. So I've got some seeds, so I'm just going to use my knife to get rid of those. There. And then you can squeeze this. There are tools, vegetable or juice reamers, etc., juicers that you can use, but you can also just use your hand and squeeze it. Now, if they call for the zest, what they're asking for is the colored skin. And when you look inside after I've cut it, you see that the colored skin surrounds a little white layer that surrounds the flesh of the lemon or the citrus, because this is going to be the same for lemons, limes, or orange. And what you really want is just that colored skin, okay? So you can do that in different ways. I could take my knife and just run off the edge and get a few pieces of the peel.
That's pretty tedious.
That's pretty tedious, exactly. So there are also tools for this. This is called a zester, and you can use this zester to pull just the zest off, okay? And then using this type of tool, I'm going to get these little strips of zest, right? And once I've done that, I'd want to run my knife through it to make them small, little tiny pieces of zest. Or
there's another option.
We use this for our ginger. You can also use this to zest. And again, what you want to make sure that you're doing is just taking the colored portion of the skin and not getting into the white portion. So the white portion is called the pith, and it's very bitter, and so you want to avoid that.
Right. But the colored portion has all kinds of wonderful volatile chemicals and fruity esters. That
it smells delicious.
It smells
right
amazing in here right now, and that all of that flavor is released, and it should go into your food. And a lot of times when you have a recipe and you don't want to put too much acid in it, but you still want lemon flavor, you're going to use
a little bit of the zest.
The zest instead, yeah.
And it can be one of those things too. If you have a recipe that's going to call for a lot of lemon juice or a lot of lime juice, so you know that you're going to be going through a lot of them, rather than waste all of those peels, what you could do is you can zest them first, and then you can put that zest in little like ice cube trays into your freezer, and so you get little portions of zest that you can pull out at a later date for recipes.
I've done that with a little, freeze it with a little bit of juice just to keep, just to hold it.
Yep,
yeah,
that works.
Out.
We have a lovely mango here, cleaned off our board so you can see what we're doing. So mangoes are another funny fruit like pineapple. I think they can be intimidating. The funny thing about mangoes is that they have this big pit, and it runs through the fruit. If you can see, this fruit isn't quite round. It's kind of an oval, and the pit actually runs through it top to bottom along that oval. So what I need to do is to pull the flesh off from around that pit, because it's really, you can't cut through it. There's no way to cut through it.
It's flat.
It's
a flat kind
You'll
of
see.
Oval pit.
So the way I usually do it is I take off the bottom, so I've got a nice little flat spot.
Always thinking about safety and not rolling things around.
So I've cut off the bottom, and my pit is going to be running straight through that way.
And you can see it there.
Mm-hmm. You can see the bottom of it there. So I've got a flat surface. What I can do is cut around that pit.
Because you'll find it.
You'll feel it. So I'm using my knife to kind of cut around that pit. I'm feeling the pit and cutting around it. And there you can see it started right there. And I'm going to go around the other side as well. And I end up with these 2 bigger pieces. Now these pieces, I'm going to run around the edge of that pit because I can pull some flesh off of there as well.
Oh yeah, that's still good stuff.
And then the cook usually gets this pit to gnaw on and nibble on. That's a nice little snack for the cook. And then to use this flesh, you can do one of 2 things. One of the ways that I like to do this is to score it and open it up. We talked about this earlier. So I'm very carefully, and I can do this into my hand or I can do this onto the board. I'm just cutting through the mango, just like the avocado when we scored the avocado earlier. I'm taking my knife and I'm scoring it just to the skin but not through the skin in one direction. And then I'm going to go again perpendicular to that in the opposite direction.
It makes pretty diamonds.
It makes pretty diamonds, which can be eaten if you're just going to eat this as a snack, straight out of the skin.
It has its own holder.
So if you take that and then pop it up like this, you have this nice cut mango, and you can just eat it right out of the skin, or you can take your knife and you can pull it off of the skin.
And once it's exposed like that, it really comes neatly off of that big skin.
So I can run my knife, whoops, and it's easier if it's actually...
That one wants to bend back.
This one does want to bend back. I can pull my pieces of mango right off. So that's one way that I can handle it. The other way is, so these smaller pieces are a little bit easier. I can pull them right off of the skin, and I'm just running my knife carefully and slowly.
You see, she's slicing a jigsaw fashion to kind of get the peel gently off of it.
Got a piece there, and I'm going to do this side as well.
Nice.
And these I can slice and dice. Okay? And sometimes the same thing, I'll do the same thing with this. So I'll cut this into a couple of sections, and then I'll pull that off of the skin like this.
Nice. Look at all that good mango.
Yeah, so this is lovely. This is a nice mango. Maybe it could have gone another day, but it's not terribly underripe.
You know, it's probably worth mentioning that this is a Mexican mango, and that there are also a small all gold mango,
Yes.
and then those are the Philippines mango. So one is sort of a new world mango, and one's sort of an old world mango. I suppose that's the way to
There
look
was
at
a
it.
sticker still on here. Is the sticker there? Where's the sticker? Ah,
That was probably from Mexico.
it was. It doesn't even say
Yeah, right here. It says Mexico.
Mexico. Yep.
Yeah, so, but the gold ones, it's the same thing. They're really the same fruit, only one's just bigger and has a rosier flesh. The little small gold ones, you cut them the same way, you deal with them the same way, use them in the same applications.
They have the same pit in the center.
They have that same developed flat oval pit in the center. They have to be dealt with in the same way.
But again, this is something you can snack on. Tahini, great on that.
Tahini is, I mean, chili powder on those is just so delicious, you know.
A little lime. This makes a lovely salsa.
Oh.
Can be added to a salad. Can be added on top of your overnight oats for a little
can.
tropical flavor. So mango's another fun.
It naturally wants to be paired with pineapple. They like to hang out together.
They do.
Yeah.
Tropical.
Have a good time.
Love it. So the last thing we have here, just because our camera person, Terry, our lovely Terry, gave us her nectarine to show you, because we're in the middle of stone fruit season, right? So you could, so Kelly's bringing up the serrated peeler. So that's something that could easily be used to peel this if you wanted to peel it.
Right. So I mean, just these have been created to work for very soft fruits and tomatoes and things like that. They're a relative newcomer on on the kitchen gadget stage. I'm a fan of them. They can really work. Most of the time, these have such lovely, delicate skins. We don't want to take them off, and a lot of the minerals are in there right under the skin.
Yeah.
So we want to retain all of the nutrition in that.
And we don't even, in this case, I don't think we even need to peel it. I'm going to run my knife around it.
And this
I'm
is
gonna do this on
probably
the
a
board.
clingstone, I would imagine.
Yep. So I find the easiest way to do this is to run it around in one direction and then the other direction. And then you have quarters, and you can usually,
Kind of rotate
depending
them.
on how ripe it is, pull. Ooh, this one didn't want to quite go.
Oh, that behaved itself fairly well.
So that one behaved pretty well, or I could make a couple more cuts.
Yeah, I mean, I just tend to slice wedges off of it like
Yeah.
that. And then I have a better chance of getting one that looks decent.
So when Kelly said cling fruit, there are some stone fruit that cling to their seed, and therefore they don't come off quite as easily.
So you've heard of a cling peach, that's what that is.
Yep. And there are others that if you do that quartering and then you twist, that they will come right off. So
And that's called a freestone.
freestone peach. So here we go, nectarines. You can also eat this just like an apple right off of the pit.
I just chew on it.
Yeah. They're so juicy.
They just don't make it home from the farmer's market a lot. One thing I want to point out is that if you're choosing this fruit, you may see that there's speckles all over it, and you may think that's not good, but it is good. That shows that that's sugar right there that's come up. That means they're very ripe and the sugar's coming up toward the...
And they're ready to eat.
And they're ready to eat and delicious. This one smells good, very sweet.
And this is a white nectarine. They also come in yellow
that
nectarines, so the
pretty?
flesh is a little bit, the skin is yellower and the flesh is yellower, and it's really a personal preference.
It is. This one's, I think that the white ones are a little more sweet, and I
Yeah.
think the yellow ones tend to have a little more overall flavor, but that's just my opinion.
I think they're both delicious.
Very good.
I'm gonna try one.
Cheers. Thank you, Terry.